everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I'm your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Bubba Baker. Al played professional football for the Detroit Lions, St. Louis Cardinals, Minnesota Vikings, and the Cleveland Browns. In addition to Al's historic football career, he is a published author and just released the graphic novel called The Super 7, The Intergalactic Animal Football League, is a restaurant owner and appeared on Shark Tank that got him the patent for Bubba's Q Boneless Baby Back Ribs, and the host of the podcast, The Beau and Bubba Show. You can find Bubba Baker by going to his website, bubbab7.com, or by searching him on social media at Bubba Baker 11. You can find Bubba Baker by going to his website, bubbab7.com, or by going and following him on social media at Bubba Baker 111. Hello, Al. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Wow, after that introduction, I don't know if I could live up to it, Oh. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And this is an episode that I've been so enthusiastic since our conversations and you being on, deciding to be a guest and us working on that I have been so excited for us to do. So let's dive into it. To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Bubba Baker?
Yeah, at the young age of 66 years young, it looks a whole lot different than what I thought success was. Having played in the National Football League, which you know so much about it, and you've seen so many of those young guys come through it, I thought fame and fortune equaled success. Well, I'm just going to keep it real. I didn't do so well with the fame part. I was rookie of the year. I was all pro. You can imagine having that kind of success. I had 23 quarterback sacks as a 20-year-old in the National Football League before it was an official sack, and the people in Detroit went nuts. I think the year before, there was a statistic that the team had about 12 total. I come in as a baby. And so, I found out quickly what it meant to be pulled from all ends, including the awards part of it in the offseason. And again, I'm going to leave it at that without going into detail. I didn't handle it so well, I wasn't exactly a Lawrence Taylor, but I was the guy that I just didn't have a clue of who I was because so many other people told me who I was. And at 20, how do you figure that out? Well, and all these things are going on around you. So fast forward, now success for me is to wake up in the morning next to the woman that I've been married to for 40 years. We've been married and in a relationship for 41, and have her reach over and touch me and say, I love you. That because all the other stuff, and of course my personal relationship with God, that's first, because it wouldn't be possible to have her because we are the perfect match. She never talks. She's all eyes and body. I know when I'm out there. I know how to get in place. I know when to sit. I know when to roll. And she never has to say a word. She is, I know this is a cliche, but she is my soulmate. So for me, and I left out one really important thing after playing in the National Football League for 13 years, playing college basketball and football season after season, 4 years, and playing 4 sports in high school, basketball, football, baseball, and through the shot put. That was the only way to keep out of trouble. And so now I find myself really satisfied and successful with very little things. a relationship with my wife and my mother-in-law. She's our roommate. She just turned 90. Knowing that I've done all those things that you named, and knowing this one valuable thing that I hope to share with people. Don't ever let what you do determine who you are. Because if that were true, when my football career was over, I was done. You know what I'm saying? If you let what you do dictate who you are, then when your career is over, you're nobody. I went to work the day after I met this guy, you probably never heard of him, named Bill Belichick. And I found out that he was going to be the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns in 1990. I had an invitation to my retirement inside of my lapel, inside of my jacket. And I went and I met and I wanted to visit with him man to man. And he was cool about that. He was like, hey, come in, let's talk. You're a 13-year vet. And then he had this hill built, a 70-degree hill. And then he talked about a 440-yard event that he was going to test the players. And then he mentioned to me about toughness. Now, I'm in my 13th year. I done played in 5 Pro Bowls. I've been all pro 3 times. I've been rookie of the year, got all these records. I deliver. And here's somebody who's telling me I got to prove that I'm tough. So I went into my lapel. I opened up the invitation and I invited him, which he didn't show up to my retirement party because I knew that wasn't going to work out well. And he went on not to disappoint. Things didn't go so well for him in Cleveland just because we weren't ready for that in your face kind of coaching. And I think he cut his teeth on the Browns. And so, I've seen it so many times. I've seen young guys come into the business. I remember a guy named Johnny Manziel. No one was more of an example of, not being able to deal with all the, and you have to, like my characters, you got to stay focused in order to access their superpowers, the Super Seven, right? In order to access their superpowers, you'll get this. All 7 characters have to focus on one event in order to access their superpowers. That's team. That's all that is. That's the team in me. And that is so true in everything that we do, whether it's an organization of a church or football or baseball, you got to dial in and all that other stuff. And we got a lot of distractions now with these things. You can just sit there. If you're not disciplined, you can sit there for hours and just read bad news and things that are going on around the world. And for me, success is getting up in the morning and being grateful after all those years playing on AstroTurf. Recently, 2019, I actually had somebody, when you hear this term, cervical operation, it just simply means they went in your spine, in your central system of your body, and told me I'd never be able to raise my hands like this. A lot of the people that's had that operation, a corpectomy, a laminectomy, I've got a cage in my throat here for it represents my spine now because they were all shot from the old headbutt and jerk days, right? So for me, success is my health. God, if you don't have your health, if I work out, I don't know if you call it a workout. I'm very active and I try to get a sweat for 1 hour a day. I ride my bike, I swim, I do yoga, I do some Jack LaLanne lifting with dumbbells, literally the size of women. They're here right in my office. I go to the gym to give myself a destination to say that if you're not fit mentally, physically, and spiritually, you cannot be successful in this world. People will tell you who you are, just like I'm saying about these ads. athletes or people or young people don't get it like the young people, like my granddaughter taught me, don't get it twisted
And
because
I think
I
and that's important to understand of what you're doing, what your goals are, and then being able to say, okay, but I have to stay true to my core values and understand, especially in pro football, we'll start there. You know, you had a very successful career in professional football. You have the record. You beat out Michael Strahan, and that
tell
was
your boy Strahan who has the real record. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. No,
um,
Michael was awesome. Yeah.
Michael is awesome. He's an amazing
Yeah, he is.
man. But it's interesting because you recently, with rule changes and stuff, your record actually now is the highest record. And like you had said, you have all these accomplishments. And before going into football, you played many sports, including basketball and football, all 4 years of your college program days while you played football, because that kind of was your first long-standing career move, like you said, you were in the league for over a decade. What was it like being in the league and achieving those, but then continuously working on the next goal and the next thing that you want to accomplish within your football career?
Are we talking specifically football or my goals in life? Because
Football for right now. We're gonna
okay, okay,
then
okay,
transition into everything else.
okay. Football was pretty simple for me. Being that it's draft, and I did some draft shows last night, Zooms, and it
Yes.
was really cool to see all the younger. Certainly to see Bryce Young, a gentleman who set the standards and his family and everything that he represents from Alabama, and some of the draft choices that I saw, like just gentlemen, nice young men. Uh, the clothes they wear, no shirts, the size of their jewelry. Hell, they need bodyguards. I mean, these guys aren't even in the NFL yet. But that, I digress again because my ADHD. I told you about that before. But that was the one thing that popped out with me. I was looking at their jewelry like, whoa. He didn't even got to the league yet. That was my first year's salary, what most of them had around their necks. But that's another story. But see, my goal was simple. They told me in the old day there was none of this hoopla. ESPN didn't even exist. Boy, I really feel old. One of the things that motivated me, and I don't recommend this for anybody in any other field, was that I was under the impression I was going to be a first round draft choice. There was 11 defensive linemen that went before me. 11. So I naturally had a chip on my shoulder. I had a chip on my shoulder. And it was real easy for me to say, when I get there, I don't want no friends. I'm going to be in the best possible shape that I can be in. And I'm going to prove to them that I can play football. And that's what the 23 sacks represented. It was kind of I told you I can play this game. And then, you know, I spent so much time training physically. I didn't take any time out to take deep breaths. I came from a school in Fort Collins, Colorado, the most beautiful city. All I ever thought about the mountains was to run them. Whenever I saw, you know what I mean, the beauty of it, I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to run that course." "Ooh, I'm running. I'm going down to Boulder." Instead of taking a minute and sitting down and thinking, "What's next?" I didn't because I wanted to make my point, and I was wanted to make it emphatically. And to me, in a sense, that's a level of comparing yourself to others. Because those other 11 defensive linemen that went before me, I wanted to make sure they knew I'm the best at this. You know what I mean? And so I didn't enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really good lesson for me. I get a little emotional when I think about that because I don't want to see any of these young men go through what I went through, you know, not enjoying the moment. Oh, now I know. Now, as I was sharing with you off the air, I got this 15-year-old, and I know she thinks I'm really lame. Well, first of all, she has to teach me how to use my. She thinks I'm really Papa. That's her favorite thing. I mean, even my 10 and 11 and 9-year-old grandchildren, even the 2-year-old, they just kind of give me this look like, where's this guy from? Because I'm always saying to them, slow down, guys. Slow down. Your mom's got to pay for it. Your mom's got to buy groceries. Your mom's got to, well, your grandfather's got to buy the college tuition. But, and I keep saying to him, slow down. And at 15, who wants to hear that? She wants to hurry up and be 16. And she wants to hurry up and be 18. And of course, I wish I could take her back to when I held her in one hand when she came home from the hospital. It's enjoying where you are.
And I think that's really important. A key takeaway right off the bat is enjoying where you are and slowing down. It's, you're going to go in life where you want to go, and you're going to have your goals no matter what day of the week it is. But you don't want to not remember what you're doing today and those feelings and those memories and the time you're spending with people, because you're so quickly on to the next and having to do the next thing. And I really enjoyed your story and you talking about that chip on your shoulder and understanding that that was what you felt at the time you needed to do. But looking back, you really realized, yeah, that was a great goal. But if you had gone into the league with a different perspective, who knows what could have built. And having others learn from that is, it doesn't matter. Look at yourself. Look at Tom Brady. Some of the greats have come out later in the draft pick or not even in a draft pick. And that does not mean they can't come out and no matter what you're doing, accomplish amazing things. So don't count yourself out. My next question, before we move kind of more off the football, because we have so much to cover, but as we talk about, like you just said, we are filming in the middle, literally in the middle of the draft happening, which is awesome. What is it like for you still being a part of, the NFL alumni organization, being a part of these events, being able to talk to, those new guys on the block going through the football league, the draft? What does that all look like for you and the feeling you get watching the draft, talking to these guys and being a part of the organization? I mean, you're still a part of and very involved within the NFL. So what has that been like for you being on the other end of it now?
It's so ironic. One of my guests that I had on my NFL Alumni Media podcast was Doug Williams, the first African-American MVP quarterback, set a second quarter record of 240 yards in one quarter, in the second quarter in the Super Bowl. Just literally killed Denver. And he and I were talking about this very thing because he's a senior advisor for the Washington Commanders. And he said, Bubba, I just can't wrap my mind around the money these young guys make today. Now, here's a guy in dealing with advising the front office of the Commanders, which is a very high position. He's a very successful man. And he couldn't understand it. And so to see the quality of young men, there's a young man that got drafted last night, and it sends chills to think about what I saw. His name is Will Anderson. And he doesn't have the statistics that some of the what they call edge rushers, pass rushers had. He doesn't have the size of a Joey Bosa or the big muscular arms. And yet he was taken as like the number 3 pick to in the NFL draft on character.
Mm-hmm.
On character. Never have I ever seen it. So I got chills just thinking, because I love this young man. He played for Alabama. He was an outside linebacker, but the damage that has been done due to some other things at the Houston Texans, they wanted to build their organization around a new quarterback and around character. So they draft this kid, and so they're talking about him. They're saying, "Oh yeah, he's not this. He doesn't have this, doesn't have that." And then they talked about character, and I can tell you, tears ran down my eyes. I'm like, "Good for this young man. They're going to build this organization around defensively." And you should have seen him jumping up and down in the draft room. And I'm like, normally that's like because he ran a 4.4, or normally because he bench pressed 350 pounds or whatever, 20 times, whatever that is. Character. And I got to tell you, I thought, congratulations to the National Football League, because now they're looking 20 years ahead. They're looking at a 12 to 15-year career. And they just kept talking about it. No, his 40 won't jump out at you. And at the same time, and behind him, he's killing quarterbacks. They're talking about his effort and his work ethic. And then they finally panned up to him, and they asked him a question, and he said, and I quote, they said, "How does it feel?" Now, this is probably, I'm guessing, a 21-year-old. He said, "I can't wait to get to work." And then he put his arm around his four sisters, right? And he said, "If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here." And the girl from ESPN said, "Why?" He said, "Because they beat the hell out of me." His big sisters put the whip on him, And I mean, that was just so you root for a guy like that. He wasn't, he did have on a big old thing that said Anderson. I was like, wow, how many carrots is that? But I mean, he's a kid, he's a kid,
And I love, I've seen, when talking about that story, when I first went into working with the New York Giants, David Tyree was my boss. My first day of work was right after the draft ended. That Monday, when every new draft pick reports, all your new players, that was the first day. And me and David worked very hard, and the league works very hard in teaching the guys not just things on the field, but off the field to be successful. And I think over the years, it's very much grown in a positive direction to say it doesn't just matter what your stats are on paper. Who are you outside the paper? What can you bring? Because at the end of the day, there's certain skills you cannot teach. Your work ethic, your character, your dedication, how are you going to lead and to build others up, right? As a leader, especially within football or any sport, you have to be able to carry your team and be able to build off everyone's skills to carry them. And, I remember one day it was before the training camp started, before the guys went on a break. And David Tyree and I were in a room with the guys, all the rookies that had come in, and he looked at everyone, and I was standing next to him, and he goes, "Unless you're draft pick number 1, that does not mean you're safe. Anyone can outperform anyone before that final roster is picked, and understand that there's many different things that go into play of someone outperforming and getting picked over you." And I think that was a great thing to say to the guys at the time, so that they understand that even though you might have been looked at as the underdog, you can end up being the top performer and the one people know and recognize, and the people that the players go to as well. So I think being that organizations, especially within the NFL, are looking at those things and making it known that they're looking at those things are so important. And I think that player will so succeed within the league. And I'm excited myself to see what he ends up doing within the organization.
I think it's valued, and you call it achieving success. And part of one of those building blocks is leadership. Mm-hmm. And when he made that statement, "I can't wait to get to work," that's what you want to hear in any business. I'm no longer in the restaurant business. I actually sold out, literally, ran from it. I've been in it my whole life. But the one thing I was always looking for, was leadership in the kitchen. I wanted to be able to go on and do other things, meet people, and develop new things. But uh, I want to tell you why I wrote this book. It's really important because it ties into all this. I'm an expert on how not to do. You know what I mean? You know, there's a thing that's called a 10th Dan in jujitsu and karate. And I learned it when I was studying one of my characters. His name is Alexander the Great, named him after my grandson. And what I mean by this, in some parts of Japan, you become so destructive as a martial artist, your hand, you have to register them. Your hands are deadly. I mean, they literally take their handprints and they give them this thing and this belt on there. I mean, they're just off the charts, and they can poke you somewhere, and you just and they become the equivalent in the East of a doctor. They know the body so well, of the pressure points, that there is some form of doctor, of a medical in that culture. I'm saying that because I feel like I have a 10th Dan in life. I've seen a side of it that a lot of guys never come back from, you know. I don't know if you're old enough, but there was a song back in the 80s. The artist's name was David Bowie, and he had a song called Fame. Mm-hmm. And he talked about what fame does. We read it every day. We see Elvis and Prince and Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston and all these famous people, and Heath Ledger, what a talent, and gone. And everybody tries to figure out who did it. Oh, it's more about what did it. Mm-hmm. Fame. I was right there. And I'm saying this to you to illustrate my 10th Dan degree in life allows me now to tell the truth. I went through this point where, you said what was politically correct. And yes, I realize there's a public forum and things have changed. But in the end, what people are really looking for from us is honesty. Not brutal, not, when somebody says, how do you look? No, you don't go fat, but, you can still say, I wouldn't wear that, I mean, and we all see that. That's my perfect example because my wife and I, we shop at some of the big box stores. And down here in Florida, one of the things I always say to my wife is, she shouldn't wear that. Those tights, those spandex pants, they're not for everybody. That's just one of my rules. That'd be I've seen girls my size with them on, and I'm like, she shouldn't wear those.
And I think it's knowing who you are in all different aspects, and you're tying it into your clothing, but understanding who you are and understanding what fits you. I think one of the examples, if we're talking about clothing, that I always say is, it isn't necessarily what you wear, it's how you wear it. So wear clothes that fit you, and that can end up playing a different factor, right? If you wear the right clothing, the right sizing, it can end up making you look slimmer. It could end up making you, look taller. It could end up doing all these different things. So understanding how your body is in that aspect and understanding what to wear to make yourself look confident, but also fits you in the right ways can be such the difference, so that you're not walking around and people going, well, but I think that was a great way to move on to our next part with, your book that you have come out. I'm so excited for it. It is the Super 7, the Intergalactic Animal Football League. So I want to start out with your passion for other things besides football. We talked about it. You were then in the restaurant business for many years on Shark Tank, and your ribs can still be found in grocery stores, and they're amazing to eat. But your original passion, as we've discussed different times, was drawing, and it's kind of come full circle for you. So I want to start in with, how did you get into drawing, and what was that like as a kid, drawing different things?
Well, I grew up in the late 60s, and Marvel superheroes hit the scene. Wonder Woman, woo-hoo! It was the first time I'd seen cartoon boobs. I was in love. No, it really wasn't that. It was the fact that Submariner, the Hulk, Thor, that was my guy. But who didn't love Captain America? So I could draw. I learned that about the sixth grade. I could draw anything that I saw. Nothing like Bob Ross or the people that are. I'm not putting myself down. I'm just, like you said, I know who I am. I can draw anything I see. Oh, anything that I see, for whatever reason, in my mind, I can duplicate it, shade it, and make it look with a pencil. I mean, I can do a number two pencil. I don't even have to have professional pencils. I do now, but I fell in love with superheroes, and they segmented me through a difficult part in my life in Newark, New Jersey, from like the sixth grade on to about mid-summer of my eighth grade. I was pleasingly plump. There you go with that politically correct. I was fat. I was fat. I was a fat kid, buck teeth, bow-legged, and got bullied. Got bullied a lot. But the one thing that saved me was in Newark, in the inner city, you didn't get books to own. You got books to borrow. And so you had to I would take a paper bag and I would wrap that book, and then I would draw the Marvel superheroes on that. And one day walking to school, this bully named Vinnie Brown said, "Where you going with those books?" And fast forward, everybody became to know me as the kid that would draw on the back of your paper bag books for $5. Now I had a pocket full of money. I had a pocket full of money. You know what I mean? I had this little business going, and they would be like, "Here's $5 for you to draw with." I'd say, "Well, what do you want? Who do you want? What do you want?" And I remember a kid one time, we were in the eighth grade. His name was Kevin Smith. He said, "Draw me Santana Abraxas on the back of my book." And I said, "Okay." And I did. Full color. I drew it and colored it in with pencils. And he was so proud of that. And it cost $5. It took me no time because I loved doing it. And I had this little enterprise going. And I learned a valuable lesson about that. And I was never telling anybody how much money you got, because my mother used to make me pay for the food I ate. My mother would be like, "Where you get all that money?" And I said, "Well, for the books, Mom." And she knew kids would come to the house and I would draw on the books. And so I fell in love then. And I had these characters in my head, literally, for 50 years. They were talking, they were active. And then when I got, say, about 4 years into my NFL career, I knew I had proved that I could play this game, and I knew how I needed to prepare. And that was to tell myself, "Hey, you got to prepare like you talked about that free agent every year, and you'll be fine. Take care of your body." But then one day it hit me. I got a sack. Everybody was jumping all over me. I ran to the sidelines, and I looked over at the guy getting up. His helmet was almost on sideways. He was number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys, and his name was Roger Staubach. And it hit me. You just sacked your boyhood hero. Wow. And then I started to realize really what professional football meant to me. I was standing on the sidelines, and I was watching some of the most phenomenal athletes in the galaxy. And that came back to me during COVID. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to tell this story because I was so disappointed in humanity. I really was. And the childhood side of me came out. I was locked into a dorm. I mean, not dorm. It felt like a dorm. I was locked into my condo with my wife. We had never, ever spent every day, all day. Well, aside from our honeymoon, but all of a sudden, I've been the ambassador of the products. I've hustled. I've been out. I was speaking. Now I'm home. And for her, she was like, who is this dude? And I was thinking, who is this chick? You know, and I had some depression set in from watching the news because I believed my leaders when they said it was 2 weeks and then 2 months. And then before it was over, watching the news every day, I was depressed. And drawing these 7 characters saved my life. They literally came out, and one of my grandchildren, Alexander, who's now, 9, wow, he was, going on 7, and he said, Papa, you're always talking about your gifts and talents. What are you going to do with all these characters you draw? And the NFL, thank God for them, they had these Zooms. Everybody was Zooming everything, and they had these writers' Zooms. And a guy by the name of Brandon Myrie, who writes in Hollywood, and Andre, Dre, Hardy, and another guy named Thomas Q. Jones took interest in me and taught me this one thing about writing, that the art of writing is rewriting. And every time I sit down to my computer, I go back and I look at what I wrote, and I get out I go on to my phone and I get my thesaurus, and there's a better way for me to say it, more concisely, better to fit the story. And so I've matched my artwork, which is backwards. You're supposed to write the script first, then include the art. Well, I already had these characters. I had 7 characters, and I named them after my children and my grandchildren, going back to when we first started talking, because I knew what success was. I knew what it meant. So I started a company called Prowl Entertainment. Priscilla, Alexander, Alasia, Lena, who's the baby, and that's Prowl. And from there, I put the book under it and every other cost that went along with it, and I turned it into a business. And as I said, the 7 characters represent, it's my way of honoring some of those phenomenal athletes. I mean, one of the characters is the cheetah, and I used Julian Edelman. I used Cliff Branch. Congratulations to him going into the Hall of Fame posthumously. I used Cooper Kupp. I used Odell Beckham. And I took these guys and I drew this cheetah, and I made it female because of Priscilla, my granddaughter, because she runs hurdles. And I mean, the whole time, I'm motivated because I was sitting in the best seat in the house. I was on the sideline, and I got to see these cats after watching them on film at home. You know what I mean? The closeness, not just from a TV, from a 16 millimeter film. Yeah, 16 millimeter film back then. I saw them up close. So I was able to create the story. And the book is about what I was experiencing during my depression, which I, thank God, I found out what was causing it. I was watching too much of the news, too much negative intake. Learned that again, thanks to the National Football League. They had a 24/7 helpline, and I called it. Disguised my voice, I'm like, but, and I learned that you need to, in everything that you do, you need to give back. And so the 3 things that my book is about, while it's called the Super 7, it's 7 animals. I did not want to give any credence to race. I didn't want to have any politics. And the thing that the book is about, it's about climate control. It's about the thing that we forgot about during COVID and still haven't gained it back, tolerance. And the last thing I started with was by saying, you have to focus to access your superpowers. And I want to say to your audience, we all have superpowers, but if you're not able to focus on them, you're not going to be able to access them. You're just going to be somebody who has, uh, well, it's a term I use loosely, and I told you I wasn't perfect. It's a brain fart. It just comes through and it's gone, you know? And that's what I wanted to do with the book. I wanted people to read it. Yes, it has a story to it. It's a graphic novel, but I did it in the form of a comic because I didn't want to preach to people. But God only knows. We've got to get back to, if we differ, because we differ in opinion, it doesn't mean we have to hate each other. And that's sad because the enemy was COVID. It wasn't other people. It wasn't other races. It wasn't other genders. And why we took that route, I can only associate it with fear. But that to me was the main motivation for writing this book. That, by the way, if you go on to Amazon, just put in the Al Bubba Baker book right now, you'll see. I'm surprised. As of this morning, my wife informed me that there's 360 reviews, and we have all 5-star reviews. I've never seen that in my life. So the people that are critics that are reading it are walking away from it going, "Oh wow, what a way to deliver." Even the person I told you off air who challenged me and said, "When is series 2 going?" I'm like, "Series 2? I'm on Amazon. I'm the one that's got to promote this book. I've got to I've got to make this book work." We're talking about series 2. I haven't even stopped to think about. I write things into the storyline, which I just renamed. I called it Behind the Lines, like the line of scrimmage in football, or the cooking line in food. That came to me one night. I woke up at like 3 in the morning. I was like, "No, this is not a storyline. It's behind the lines." And that's, as a writer, it's behind the scenes. And I have 111 pages to date. So yes, series 2, guys, is coming. But right now, we need to, the story. You wrote a book. We need to push this book and see where the book is going to go. I got 90 days, and then after that, it levels off. But I wrote this book because it's my way of giving back to the National Football League. I'd like to share something in the forwards that I said. And
Please
this
do.
is from the book. Yeah. A special thanks to the National Football League for giving me the amazing opportunity to witness some of the greatest athletes in the galaxy by being in the best seat in the stadium, the sideline. I combined their traits and body types with that of animals' natural ability to create the Super Seven. I have to confess, I developed a man crush. I'm coming out, guys, on Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. What a special football player. Coming from the Detroit Lions, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Cleveland Browns. How am I saying this publicly? Wow, that guy is phenomenal. So I built the protagonist, JB, number 7, who's an actual Ram, went to Colorado State. The GOAT is how we identify with him. Little Tom Brady, lots of Tom Brady, John Elway, a guy named Randall Cunningham, and then of course Doug Williams, who accomplished some great things. But I put all those into the character. These character, see what I'm saying? I drew them, and I'm honoring those guys, and I'm also admitting that while I was reading on certain animals, one of my characters' name is Bobo. I learned to respect animals, and I'm going to take this time to say it. If I'm going to be a proponent of the ecosystem and the climate, I have to acknowledge that if there's any one animal that does not, lots of animals, all animals, in my opinion, don't belong in the zoo. That's a whole nother story, another show. But the silverback gorilla, the reason that they're always just sitting and look like they're on quaaludes when you go to the zoo is because that is an animal that takes his tribe of females and teenagers, right, some 1,200 miles to eat this particular bark in northern Africa. And so he's not designed, you can't give him enough space. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know, I know there's a lot of animals, but him in particular, this is a majestic animal. And I wrote that into my character. And I also wanted to share the world where the book is. These are a group of animals that came from Mars. They're animal superheroes that came from Mars. And I made them settle in the Grand Canyon National Park. That's where the story's told. While I was doing my research, one of the greatest things that ever happened to me was I learned that there's a tribe of people on the West Rim in the Grand Canyon called the Havasupai tribe. They've been there for 800 years. What? I'm like, what? You're telling me that this tribe of Indians been in the Grand Canyon? They are the original Avengers of Justice in the Grand Canyon. And something happened politically with Roosevelt back in 1906. You know, I'm not getting into that, but these people, I mean, 800 years. So it made my story to me so real that they landed there. And one of the things that I wanted to tell without giving away the story is they're not, they are, I created a race called anthropodins, the anthropoid, and I just created a disease that comes from the villainous Queen Tick Eve, and it's called leucanthropia, which is from another word in the Greek mythology, leucans, and that is where you turn into a werewolf. They really had beliefs of that. So I created leucanthropians and I created anthropodins, and we call them anthros and leucans for short. And they are, the leucans are the villains, and the anthropoids, they walk on two legs. They speak highly. They're highly intelligent. And I am working on Behind the Lines that's going to be on my social media, and it's going to go up on this new platform that we're using that's being taught now, and of course on YouTube. And I want to do not the backstory, but I want to make people think about this. Using the term the great being, for me, it means God. If he created post-dinosaur world man, seeing how man has evolved and what we saw during COVID, if I had any understanding whatsoever, which I don't, I'd be slightly disappointed in where man has gone and how he's reacted to the world. And as a result, the scientists have found out that I learned there's billions of galaxies. So why wouldn't there be another galaxy where animals reign and we're in control? That's what the book's about.
And
that's where my mind went on it.
And I love that. And I love the example as well that we have here of knowing your passion and having your passion work for you, and understanding that in your life, you can learn so much and go on so many different adventures and find your moments throughout so many different paths. And that's okay. And that is so good as well. Look at, from Al Bubba Baker, I love saying that name. But from Al's, journey of drawing when he was a kid to playing football, all of that ended up playing a role in making a full circle back to his passion of drawing and creating stories and creating this book and this novel, that all those experiences played into each other. And all of that, he then ended up, while doing research, learning even more, which I think is so great, because when you have your passion and you want to learn more, it can take you down so many different tunnels and pathways, and you can learn so much about things you would have never expected. Al, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Well, they can go to my website, and it's www.bubbab7.com, and they can find the book on Amazon again by just saying Al Bubba Baker book, or the Intergalactic Animal Football League Super 7. Either way, they put that in. Or you have a link that I hope you'll share with everybody. Or they can
Yep.
follow me on my social media at Al Bubba Baker on Insta, and then on TikTok is Al Bubba Baker 111. And I want to leave you with something for your viewers and success. And it was said by then President JFK. We must be willing to dare to fail miserably in order to achieve success. You got to be willing to fail. If you're worried about failure, you'll never, ever, ever be successful.
And I think that's a great way to lead into our few key takeaways. You know, one thing I love about Al is he knows how to make an entrance and make a great lead in everything he does. So let's take it from there. And we're going to start off by doing a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation. And they are some of my favorites, though everything Al says is honestly my favorite. But don't let what you do today determine who you are. You know, your job or what you do does not have to be who you are. As well as character is so important. You know, who you put out and what you lead by example has such an impact on others. As well as the art of writing is rewriting. You know, what you write today is not finalized. You can change it. And that's writing the story of, you know, your journey, but also being on that journey. And it is okay to make one move and say, okay, I'm going to write, you know, I'm going to go down this path, and then say, you know what, that path isn't the path I want to do, and delete it and go and try something new. That is the art of writing. As well as you have to focus on your superpowers to access your superpowers. In the world of these great novel that Al has put together, one of the amazing things he talked about is accessing your superpowers, and being able to know them is going to build the ability for you to access them. So understand who you are and be able to access them. Thank you, Al Bubba Baker, for all of your insight today.
You get me. That's all I'm going to say.
This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Al Bubba Baker. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.